Okay, but this is about, so congratulations, because it's done really fantastically well. And this is about family. Mm-hmm. We found this out by reading an email that said this is about family.
That's
so
right.
Now we're going to talk about family. And so I wrote some questions about family. And I was kind of interested in family expectations before we get into the book and living the life of an artist. Mm-hmm. And if your family ever had any expectations for you as an artist and how they felt about it, either your family that you were raised by or your family that you raised or anything like that, and like how does do you consider yourself an artist?
Yeah, I guess I do.
You're an artist, you're a writer, and so like how does that play into like your real life family?
I mean, I think like I did not grow up in a community where people were artists. Like everyone had a job. I grew up in a really middle class, suburban community, and everyone had a job. And you went to college not to like pursue your art, but to get a degree that would help you get a job. And maybe you'd have a slightly better life than your parents, or at least as good a life. In our case, my dad was a corporate communications executive, and he wrote books, but he wrote them like in his spare time, and they were, it meant we went on vacation to Toronto. It wasn't like, I didn't know people who were painters or novelists or anything like that. So, in college, like I had teachers who said, well, you should be a writer, but I just thought, well, I need to make money. So when I moved here, I got a job as a corporate writer, but then I started meeting people who had a slightly bigger view of the world, and it took me a really long time to figure out how to feel that I deserved access to that, and
give yourself permission.
Yeah.
Because so much of it's such an obvious thing to say, but so much of being a writer is about giving yourself permission to be that person. It
felt like very presumptuous. And, my parents could not be more thrilled. My parents supported anything we wanted to do. But there was always just a very practical notion of, but you also have to support yourself. So, my kids, they better work every day of their lives. No, I want them to work and support their passion.
Are they creative too?
They're very creative, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
One of them's
They're
here.
Like both. There's like blushing
one
going
of them's
on.
here.
Yeah,
I know.
Blushing going on in the front row.
And the weird thing is, that's not my son who's blushing.
Okay, so let's talk about the book for a second. So I've read I read like 10 interviews with you today. So
I'm sorry.
No, listen, I'm going to tell you a true story, which is that also, not only do we have an editor in common, we have a publicist in common.
Right.
Because it's a very small industry, and so she was my publicist for books 4 and 5. So I have 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 sitting right back there. And I remember I had this panic attack once, like not really a panic attack, but just like I remember being in her office once and being like, I'm going to do all these interviews and I'm going to say the exact same thing over and over and over again. And like, that's terrible. And I was like, should I make a spreadsheet? So I like have all the answers down. And she was like, no one is going to read all of your interviews except for your mother and me. And that's it. No one else is going to read all of them. And so it's okay. But today, I read a bunch of your interviews.
Sorry, Mom.
So, so I know the answer to the question is like where you got the original idea, which is like you were walking at brunch in New York and then you saw families and stuff like that. But here's my real question is like, did you have a desire? I mean, you can share that story again because they haven't read the 10 interviews that I have. But did you have a desire to write about family? Did you have a connection with writing about family when you had written fiction before? Had you gone in that direction? And if you hadn't been writing about family, what were other things that you were, what were your earlier things that you were writing about?
That's interesting. I mean, I think I always have been writing about family, and I think, like I'm thinking about some of the, in some ways it's just a function, I think, of the age that I was when I started writing. I didn't want to write about, finding a boyfriend or getting married or having a baby. Like I just was like, I have done all of those things. They're not interesting to me as stories.
Me neither.
Yeah, so I just, like I really, really thought, okay, I am not writing the Brooklyn parenting novel or the, so that was just not interesting to me. But what is interesting to me is the shape your family takes as you get older. And I have a lot of friends with a lot of siblings. And as everyone ages and the sort of the constellation of family changes and new people come in and parents age and people's lives diverge, it's like really complicated. And I don't know anyone who has more than a few kids in their family who sort of has this very serene, like, well, we all love each other and we all get along perfectly and there's no fights, no.
And why would you want to write that book and who wants to read that book?
Right.
It's boring.
Right.
Yeah.
And I felt like there just weren't a lot of adult sibling books that were interesting to me. So
And as you say that, I realized like you could not have written this book in your 20s.
No.
You could not have written this book in your 30s.
No, I could not
You
have.
had to write this book.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
In your
And
40s.
so I do sort of make myself feel better. Like I think, okay, well, I just skipped right over the relationship novel and the and the marriage novel and the Brooklyn parenting novel, and that's a good thing for
Yeah.
everyone.
You should go write it now. You should go write the Brooklyn parenting novel.
Yes.
Oh, except you're in LA.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. Okay, so, well, you could. And actually, I was kind of interested in how is in that, like I always, like I've written three books set in New York, and like the landscape of it is like I don't even have to think about. Like now I'm in now I'm in New Orleans, and I'm not ready to write a New Orleans novel because it's not under my.
Yeah,
it's not
I know exactly what you mean.
It's under my nails.
Yeah.
In my skin, whatever.
Literally everything I wrote in graduate school took place in New York.
Because you knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you've been in LA for 8 years. So do you think you could write LA now?
Yeah, but I still sort of feel like it's not, like I haven't absorbed the city. And I lived in New York through various stages of my life. So I knew neighborhoods and people and places, and I had work experiences, and I'm not connected to Los Angeles in that way because I sit in my house and write. And so my relationship with the city is mostly social, and it's not quite as, so there's kind of isn't, I don't know, I don't feel like I have, like I definitely have this setting. I feel like I could write the setting of Los Angeles, but I'm not, I don't know, I'm not sure. Whenever I think about this new story I'm thinking about, and I think about putting it in LA, it's always like tugging me to go back to New York. So,
are you scared to write the next book? Excited?
Now I'm excited. I think that if you'd asked me this question a year ago or even 6 months ago, I would have said I was excited, but I really would have been scared. And I think that, as exciting and amazing as the publication of this book was, it completely took over my life in a way that I never anticipated and didn't quite know how to manage for a while, and so I didn't feel connected to myself as a writer at all.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm in there just coming out of 2 months of touring, and I'm like, oh, what's, like every once in a while I get to read something, and that's thrilling. And then the other day I sat down with my, just like a little notebook, and I was like, are you still there?
Yeah.
Is it still happening?
And I'm fortunate enough that I have a lot of friends who have written many books, who all assured me that I could, in fact, write another book. That everyone feels that way, and so things didn't really calm down for me until right after the holidays, and I had this extreme panic of I need to be writing something right now, and then I just realized that I felt really depleted from the year, and so that what I really needed to be doing was reading a lot.
Yeah. That's a good. What did you read?
I've been reading books that I think might have some connection with the idea that I have, and I was reading Crossing to Safety, and I was reading Light Years, and I was reading, I know, it's so good. and I have a great agent who I can call when I'm freaking out, and he sort of talked me off the edge and said, he said something really valuable, which was, it's not time to pressure yourself, but it's time to start protecting your time. So I started saying no to things and no to blurbing books, and that just feeling like I was loosening up my days started to really help. And I feel excited for this tour to be over and to disappear for a little bit. And I feel like I'm going to be very happy to be writing.
Yeah. I like to read things that like outside of my box. Like I like to read poetry.
Yeah, and I've been reading poetry, which I don't normally do. And it's always like whenever someone asks me what I've been reading, I have no, because also for a long time I was only reading books to blurb, which is great. And I feel like I want to give back, but it is sort of another depleting thing.
It's a very weird thing because you spend, like when I was younger, I was like, all I've ever wanted was to, like I spent every spare cent I had on books and I loved it so much. And if anyone gave me a book as a present, it was like a huge gift.
I know.
And then as you become a writer,
like
it becomes...
free books are arriving at your house and you're like,
oh,
no, I know,
yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
We came back from a few days away and I walked in the kitchen and my housekeeper, there was a stack of those manila envelopes and I was like, no!
And I moved from New York to New Orleans, although I still have this apartment in New York and people still have my address there. And nobody has my address in New Orleans. And I was like, I swear to God, I moved to New Orleans just so nobody can send me books anymore.
Yeah.
Like it just was like, and then when people found out my address and started sending me books, I was really mad.
Yeah.
I was like, just let me choose which books I want to read. That's how it feels like it shows up and you feel like you have to.
Yeah.
You can't, it's like a bait, like you're like, oh, somebody, because you know what went into making this book.
Right. And so you read it in a very different way. It's just not as enjoyable. Even when the book's great and you're loving the book, there's always like something running there's like a loop running in the back of my head of like, what can I say about it? Like, how can I, you know?
Yeah, it's really tricky. It changes, like, it just, your relationship with reading changes.
Yes. Yeah, so I needed to get my relationship back with reading.
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar to what what happens in your life when you decide to, devote yourself to making something, which is you have to find ways to prioritize it in your life. And so it's easy to get knocked off track. And I had, a really exciting, amazing, wonderful year in many ways, but it completely knocked me off track. So I had to figure out how to reprioritize my life in a way that I could feel like I could sit down and write again.
Okay, I have more questions for you.
Okay.
But that was really good. That was a good run that we just had there. That was natural. But now I have to look at me. Because I want answers to all these questions. And we just did in LA, she interviewed me. And then tonight we had dinner and you said, oh, there's one question that I didn't get. And so I'm going to make sure all my questions are answered tonight. And so, okay, I'm interested in talking about money for a second. So I grew up in this small town in the Midwest where like nobody would have ever had a trust fund.
Oh,
like that to me, I had no idea what it was until I went to college on the East Coast, and like you would meet people with trust funds, and you're like, "What is that?" And then they're like, "I never have to work again," or whatever the hell it means.
Yeah.
Like it means something like very special.
Yeah,
like,
it means
or terrible.
I'll tell you when I first learned about trust funds.
Okay.
I had moved to New York, and I'd lived here a couple of years because I grew up in Rochester, New York, and nobody had trust funds either. Like I thought it was really cool. Like people thought we were rich because we had a swimming pool in our backyard.
Yeah.
Which was, believe me, not the case.
Was it below ground or above ground?
No, it was in the ground.
Oh, okay. Because we had above grounds in our neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, that's why it was special. Well, that's why it was special because we got rid of the above ground because my dad had written this business book and it had gotten a great review in the Wall Street Journal, and he was like, "I'm going to be rich," and he put it in in-ground pool.
Yeah.
So. That is indicative of the spending ethos of my family. So I had lived in New York for a couple of years, and I was looking for a new apartment, and I was at an apartment on the Upper West Side that I really wanted, and everyone in the room is filling out their applications, and the rental agent's standing there looking mean and intimidating and judging everyone. And this one girl raised her hand and said, "Where's the space on this form for my trust fund income?" And I was just like, but it was literally like all these things clicked into place. I'm like, oh my God, that's how
Everyone is.
the people I know
Who don't work.
Oh, they don't work, or the people who have my job and massive apartments and beautiful clothes and go on vacation. And I'm always like, God, they're so good with money. Yeah. So, yeah.
They really penny pinch.
Yeah, exactly. So the Valpak is.
So,
like,
did you know people who the Valpak? Did you know people who had it that you? I guess so you put it into this story.
Yes.
And I guess I mean, I know it's not about you.
No, but I knew people. I certainly, had a better sense of what that life was like when my kids went to school in Brooklyn. And they went to private school. And so that dynamic became ever more apparent with the people who, didn't have jobs.
Yeah.
Or they were making a documentary about hobos for 10 years, and lived in a beautiful brownstone and had 3 kids in private school. And you were just like, what? What is your story?
Did that hobo movie ever come out?
I believe it did.
Is it on Netflix
I believe actually it did, yeah. So, and I became fascinated with that dynamic of having money and things that aren't connected to work, that you haven't actually earned.
Right.
And what it did to their relationships with their family. And, the grandparents started paying private school tuition, so you were expected to vacation with the grandparents every vacation, and sort of the little resentments and just how it just seemed to me in so many cases really suppressed people's growth and maturity.
Yeah.
And they had so much resentment about their lives. And I think part of it is because they didn't really earn their lives.
That's right. Although I have plenty of resentment.
Yeah.
As well.
But if you're literally living in the biggest brownstone in Park Slope, and then you're this is a real quote.
Yeah.
Am I gonna like the Marrakesh?
Yeah.
They've
lost perspective.
What?
Yeah.
I'll go and check it out for you. And I'll come back and tell you if you should go. Yeah, so it was just, but also, a real sense of being adrift in adulthood. When you don't have something in your life that means something to you in terms of work. And it was just, I obviously became somewhat obsessed with it.
Yeah. Work is the thing that grounds me.
Yeah.
That's the thing that when I am working on something, I wake up every day and I feel.
Yeah.
I think that when we do the touring or talking about our books in a public way, that is a kind of work, and we recognize that. But the best kind of work is the writing kind of work. Okay, wait, I have one more question.
Okay.
And then do you guys have questions? Do some people have questions? You do. Did we tell you? Do you want to know you guys know what the book's about, right? Why don't you say what the book's about?
Okay, so the book is about 4 adult siblings who have been waiting to inherit a significant sum of money, and the way that their father, who is deceased, had set up the trust fund is that none of them get it until the youngest turns 40, and then it's all evenly divided. And months before this is going to happen, one of the oldest brothers does something that endangers all of the money. So they are, for various reasons, this event impacts their lives in significant ways.
Okay, good. So here's my question that I really wanted to know the answer to.
Okay.
So I had this experience when the Middlesteins came out, where I was maybe halfway through the book and I didn't know what the name of the family was. And so, did I tell you this story
No.
already? And so I was like, what am I going to name this family? And I even think I sent the name to you, Megan. And I was like, oh, because it's Midwestern, so middle.
Yeah.
And then Steens because they're Jews. And I was like, that's so obvious and so stupid. And then I sent it to you and I sent it to my agent, Doug, and you guys were like, no, that's actually the name of the book, The Middlesteins.
Yeah,
and so,
it's a perfect name.
And so then I had this experience, and then I actually remember I met an agent, like after the book was out and sold, I was like at somebody's birthday party and I met an agent. And she was like, yeah, congratulations on your book. I heard I heard it's coming out. And I was like, yeah. She's like, that's so interesting that they let you keep that title. And I was like, why? And she's like, it's so Jewish. And she was a Jew. And I was like, but it's what what the book is.
They're Jewish?
They're Jewish. And so I knew that it was right because sometimes it's so on the nose. And then I had this experience with the new book where I didn't know what the narrator's name was for 3/4 of the book, and then all of a sudden I knew what her first name was, and then it was everything changed, to the point where I was like, maybe I'll just write this book and never know what her name is. And then when I knew what her family's last name was too, that came very near the end. I was like, oh, that changes everything too. So my question to you is, the names in this book, all of the names.
Yeah.
When did they arrive? What did they mean to you? Did it change? To me, Leo is so Leo.
The name Leo just came to me in a flash, which never, ever, ever happens.
Okay.
It was literally I was like, who's this? What's this guy's name? His name is Leo. And I was looking for a last name that could be waspy, that didn't have any real, it didn't feel ethnic in any way. It didn't feel, specifically related to anyone. And that could be waspy, but I didn't want it to be over the top waspy, like Wentworth or, something like that. Yeah. I wanted a simple name. And I think actually I know at one point I Googled the last names of people who came over on the Mayflower. And I think
that's super interesting.
Yeah, and I think, but then I think that led me to British surnames, and I saw Plum somewhere, and I just loved it because I like the sound of it. I think it sounds funny. I like that it was one. It was one syllable. It's sounds like a fruit, but it's not. So Leo Plum was there from the beginning, and then. Man, the rest of the names were hard, and I have a hard time with names. And I had different names for a lot of the characters.
Tell us some of the names of the characters.
I have these names that I just always go to, just because they're easy, common names. And one of them was Sarah, and my sister who's here has a daughter named Sarah, and I think it was B who's named Sarah, and I was like, no, I can't have a Sarah in the book because I have a niece named Sarah, and that's that's weird, and then I had this whole story around Melody's name that actually ended up coming out of the book, where the mother has her, she's sort of an afterthought, and she doesn't have a name for her. And all the other names are sort of family names. And one of the nurses says, oh, well, I always, I have 3 boys, and if I'd had a girl, I would have named her Melody. And so she just but that becomes a hurtful thing for Melody, that she doesn't have sort of a venerable family name. And I'm not sure why that came out, but it did. And I don't know. I think I try and think about how old they are. For some reason, the name Stephanie came to me very quickly, and I have a friend in Los Angeles who's exactly Stephanie in the book's age, and I said to her, oh, I have a character in my book named Stephanie, and she's 43 too, and she said, if your name is Stephanie, you're 43. So I trying to think. I did when I was naming the twin girls in the book, I looked at popular names that year. I would
you really
sort of coming out. Yeah.
I feel like names are titles of the book.
Yeah.
Mean something, last names of the book, that it forces you.
Yeah, they're really important, and I think they often don't come until you know a character So I read this, Ron Carlson wrote some book about writing a short story. It's a very slim, little, slender novel. It's kind of fun to read. But he said that he can get so preoccupied with a name that he just slugs them in, like John Doe, Jane Doe, and then we'll go back and figure out what the name is. So it doesn't slow him down. Because like searching online for names really is a fun activity that can take hours of your workday.
Yeah, I gotcha. I got somebody named Mimi the other day, and I was like,
Oh, that's a good name.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, I
Yeah.
notice names now
Yeah.
all the time.
I am always on the looking out for good names I like.
Yeah, and titles. I have a list of titles.
You do?
Yeah, I have a list of titles for future books that I'm going to write.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know if they're any good or not, but
Yeah.
I
I like
have
that,
them.
though. I like
I
that.
have like two. I have two more titles that
It's
I
like your
wanna
dream
use.
board.
It is. It's
Yeah.
my vision board.
Yeah.
I use The Secret a lot too. I like to say things out loud and then they'll come true.
Yeah.
Does anybody have? Oh, look, already a question over there, please.
I was just telling your lovely agent that Leo is one of my favorite characters ever. Who is your inspiration for him? He's just so dysfunctional and fascinating.
Well,
Is it like all men everywhere?
yeah, it's like literally it's like every guy I ever sat across a conference table from.
Yeah.
Like I worked in New York City for a long time as a copywriter and sort of a marketing branding person, and I met a lot of financial services guys, and I met a lot of internet startup guys, and there was a deep well there to draw.
You're like, I'll take this from
Yeah.
this and this
Yeah.
from this.
I
Yeah.
mean, he was so easy to write, and
That's why you started with him.
Yeah.
You're like, this is my
Yeah.
access point, is this douchebag.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
got it. Although he's got his charms.
No, he's charming.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Another question?
Yes, Miss. Hi, my name is Jerome Briscoe. I'm married. Just a question after you, Cynthia. What has the migration of writing? What have the migration of writing done for you as a whole? When I say as a whole, is your lineage, is your family, as you as a person. What is it? How has it cultivated you, give you esteem?
Like my identity and my. I mean, I think that writing was something that I always did because it was something that I could do. Like, it became very apparent when I was a student that was the thing I was good at, and then it was a way for me to earn a living, and I was really grateful that I could support myself by writing. That felt cool to me. I still remember my very first business card. I worked for W.R. Grace and in their corporate communications department, but it just said writer on it, and I thought that was like, I loved giving out that card to the financial services guys in bars. And then I think for a long time I felt that I had sold myself short or cheated myself by not trying to write more creatively, and for a long time that was sort of a secret shame because I did try once.
You kept writing, right?
Well, I tried once in my late 20s to do fiction writing, and I didn't succeed at it for a variety of reasons. I have a whole speech, it's 20 minutes long, about that, called The Secret to My Overnight Success. So I didn't. For 20 years, I told myself that I didn't want to write fiction, that I loved fiction as a reader, but not as a writer.
One thing, I'm sorry to not be
No.
grandiose, but I know one thing she sells hers is name, say her name again?
Jamie.
Jamie. And it says we started off with like travel. I wrote down travel creates change.
Travel does create change, and it's not a coincidence at all that when I relocated from Brooklyn to Los Angeles, I got serious about writing fiction. And part of it was that my kids were older, and they were becoming more independent, and I had more time, and I didn't have a job in LA, and I wanted to work. But part of it was also sort of being out of the writing world of New York City, where I felt like I had already missed my chance, like that clubhouse was closed to me. And so once I finally, and I think the difference for me in trying to do something that felt scary when I was 28 and when I was 48 was I just thought, well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like, this is not the end of the world. but I'm gonna like go hard and fast and see if I can do it.
And look what happened. Look what happened. Are there any other questions at all? Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Do either of you, have you, or do you ever think that you might write a memoir?
No.
There is
way.
nothing that interesting about my life.
I think also it's like hard enough to like write a book and then get critiqued in that way. I can't even imagine what it'd be like
I
to write
can't either.
nonfiction and then like
I
your
can't
life is
either.
judged like
Yeah.
that.
I can't either.
I can't even deal if people don't like my tweets.
I
Like I
know.
can't even like.
I know. Yeah, no.
There was somebody else had a question. I can't remember. Rachel.
This is sort of building on the previous question, but from when younger women ask you for advice, which I imagine happens always, but especially now, like, do you feel like what you've learned from all this is like that we should all like try our crazy dreams as soon as possible, or do you think that like this sort of like building a family and building a career and coming to this when you were ready, like, is what we should aspire to?
I think,
Me personally.
yes. I think you should go as, like, you should let your freak flag fly. You, Rachel Fertilizer. No, I mean, I think what I would say is it doesn't matter, like, you have to figure out what's going to work for you at the, I mean, I had to make money. Like, if someone had just said, here's an apartment, that's not to say, many people, Jami is a prime example of someone who I talk about a lot when people ask me for advice, actually, because you just figured out how to make an artistic life work, and it wasn't easy, and you committed to it.
Easy
It wasn't easy.
And it's also, of course, never easy because you always still have to do the work.
No, it's never easy. Yeah, but I just think that
you had other stuff you were doing. I
had other stuff I was doing, and I also judged myself really harshly for not doing it right the first time. And at that time, I judged everything I did so harshly that I was bound to disappoint myself. Like, there was just no way what I was writing at 28 could have pleased me. And I didn't think of it as, well, I'm just going to get better. I just thought, ooh, I guess this is the talent I was born with. And so, I'm not sure I mean, there are huge advantages to me personally to the way I did it, but it wasn't a strategy. So I don't want to sell it as strategy.
I didn't have anything else I was doing. So I just did that.
Right.
Yeah. Like
Right.
I was like, that's all I want to.
Right.
That was the thing I just liked a lot.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
it's always this equation of, when my husband and I were first married, we kind of made the most similar amounts of money. The health benefits were mine. We had a couple of babies. We were petrified about money. And then he got this amazing job, and it was his dream job. And we were always a team, but one of the team members got sent up to the big leagues. And it took a lot out of both of our lives and our family life to allow him to have that job that provided an incredible life for us. And we have always thought of ourselves as a team, and he was always encouraging me to do something more creative and to find something more fulfilling. And so, but it's, there were kids and moves and houses. I don't know. It's always just a big puzzle, and it fell into place for me when it fell into place.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I just think you brought everything to it that you were.
Yeah.
I think it was the right time for you.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. Yeah.
For sure. I say that like I know your entire life, but I do
No,
not.
but
it does feel like you
I
brought.
think you're right, and I think you know a lot of writers, and you've heard a lot of stories, and sometimes things just can only happen when they happen.
Yeah, and not every book needs to be published, and not
That's right.
not every idea needs to. It's okay to try a bunch of
Yeah.
ideas, but sometimes you see books and you just think you could have sat that one out.
Yeah.
You wrote
Yeah.
you wrote it.
Yep.
You did write it.
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
didn't need to be published.
Yeah.
I'm not saying which ones, but
We'll whisper them quietly
yeah. Does anybody
corner of the room.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions from this New York Times bestselling for many, many weeks author who knows lots of things? Yes.
How much, if anything, do you bring from your own life and experiences into your characters, into your book?
Well, a ton. I'm writing it, so it comes out of my brain. So it's, my observations and a lot of the setting of my life. The book is all in New York City, and pretty much every apartment I've ever lived in is in the book. But the plot is not from my life, and the people aren't, perfectly representational of anyone. But a lot of my feelings about New York and the kinds of people who live in New York and life in New York are in that book, and they're, it can't help but be personal. I mean, I think even if you're writing about vampires and werewolves, you're using, stuff from your life. So.
Yeah, I always think of my characters as like neighbors.
Yeah.
Even when I wrote books that are set in different decades and things like that, like I'm always like, oh, it's like somebody that I passed on the street all the time. Although lately I've also been thinking about it as like when you take it's almost like someone's photo bombing a photo, or you're like taking a vacation photo and like somebody else steps in the picture for a second. You're like, who's that person? But I know what the picture looks like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's 3 metaphors for you right there. I just came up with it like that. That's why, any other questions at all? Are you guys writers? Does everybody come here a writer if you're going to Center for Fiction? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Well.
Okay. I think we're good.
Yeah,
let's have a
thanks,
drink.
Cynthia.
Thank you, everyone.